Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about taxonomy, and this is how we classify organisms into different groups. So here's kind of like a warm-up. So we're going to divide these organisms into groups. So what we think will work together. The monkey, a tomato plant, a mushroom, an apple tree, catfish, lizard, rattlesnake, panda, frog, deer, rosebush, and dolphin. So there are many groups that these can be broken into. So I'm going to pause for a second and I want to hear what you guys think about how these should be grouped. Okay, so why do we need to classify things, right? So you guys know of Craigslist. It's where, you can go now and look for different items. There's also other search engines now besides just Craigslist that we can look on. But Craigslist is a big one. So, for example, if I'm putting up a game for sale, this Call of Duty Black Ops from Xbox One, I'm first going to say electronics because it goes with an Xbox station, right? So you can play on it. So that's electronics. So that would be my overall big category. Then under that, I would go to gaming because it's a game, right? And then under that, I'd have to put Xbox One because it's not for PlayStation. It won't work with PlayStation. So I have to put what electronic it would work with. So then, since it's a game, I'll put video games and then shooters. So Call of Duty is all about shooters, right? And then it would give me a list of all the video games for Xbox One that deal with shooters. So that's kind of how a category you could look at it. Then you would search for your game. Now pick one to sell. So there's this black truck, Jimmy Choo, which are very expensive shoes, and a baseball glove. Write down the hierarchy of categories you would post it under to make it easy for a buyer to find. You must have at least 3 to 5 hierarchy levels. I can't say that. Okay, so for instance, if I went to the baseball glove, maybe I would start with sports, right? So sports is all over to cover that kind of stuff. And then I would go to sports equipment, right? So now I would have all different equipment for all different kinds of sports. And then I might put in baseball. So far I have sports equipment, and I have baseball. So this is narrowing it down for equipment for actual baseball. And then under that, I would put gloves. So that would be another subcategory. And then from there, I might choose a left-handed glove, a catcher's glove, all these different types of glove to get down to the one I want. So that is an example of one of these. So I want you guys to do one on your own, and then you're going to tell us. Okay, so if we looked at these animals, imagine if we didn't have a classifying system for animals, and all these would be in the same category as animal. So that would be a huge category, right? So we break these up into different categories. So like spiders and shark and parrots aren't in the same category. So how would you talk about this pet? Well, here, this looks like a shark to me. And these are parrots. So talk amongst yourselves, and how would you talk about these? One swims, one flies. There's a bunch of different ways. Oh, and a cute little dog. Okay, so in order to make things easier to find, it's also easier to communicate with each other, and this is why we classify. So here's Amazon. I'm sure we all use Amazon, and let's say if I go down the big list, right, because Amazon sells everything, I would go to my electronics. Remember when I was doing the game? And then down below from there, I could click on video games, right? And then it would probably give me another thing for what type of gaming system do I have. So scientists also need a way to name organisms. And common names, really, they're not really, um, they're misleading. There's 100 things called the same thing. And biologists are like, we need a consistent name, right? Something that when I say this, everyone in the country knows what I'm talking about. So I'm not talking about the common name in different languages, because they're obviously all different, right? So they want a scientific name. So check out these slides of confusing names, right? So here, which one is a sea lion, right? And it's this guy here, antlion, and this is it. And this is an actual lion. And notice they all have lion in their name, but they're all very different organisms, right? They really aren't all that related either. So which one of these is not actually a bear? The panda, the koala, or the black bear? Which is not actually a bear? Okay, so what kind of organism is it? So invertebrate, mammal, insect, fish, or reptile? So here, what is this? Is it an invertebrate, mammal, insect, fish, or reptile? So this is the sea monkey. These are jellyfish. Are they invertebrate, mammal, insect, fish, or reptiles? And here's a spider monkey. So you're trying to figure out which one of these it is. A crayfish, a seahorse. Okay, now are all gray wolves actually gray? So here's the gray wolf, and we can see it has a variety of colors. So here we are again. Are all black bears black? No, because some are brown. And then, yeah, here are more. And of the snakes, which is more venomous, a water moccasin or a cottonmouth? So everybody has their opinion on that. And actually, if we go to the snakes, they are exactly the same snake. They are just named different things in different regions of our country. Okay, so we are going to watch this little video here. Hey, so that was a good video, right? Really shows you what it was all about. So we're going to be talking about the taxonomy, which you just heard about. So it's a naming system, right? And it was developed by Carl Linnaeus. And he uses both Greek and Latin names to make up the names because that's more of a universal scientific language. And he placed all these organisms into a few large groups called kingdoms. And then it's going to break up into other subgroups as well to get more specific as it goes along. So the grouping here is going to be kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So we start very broad, right? With kingdoms, it actually domains is on top of that. Very broad. It covers a lot of things. And as we go down, it gets more specific. So like we are Homo sapiens, right? So that's giving a very specific thing for our species. Sorry about that. Let me go back. Yeah. So they're further subdivided. Here we are. Sorry about that. Each group gets smaller and more specific as we go through this. So like, just think of, how you file stuff on your computer. You'd put it in one file. Like for me this year, I put the whole school year in one big file. And then from that, I've broken it up into different units that we're teaching. And in that, I'll have specific things for each topic. And you can see here, like, here's a file of pictures. Okay, so a way to kind of remember this is King Philip came over for great soup. So remember, the K is for kingdom, the P is for phylum, the C is for class, the O is for order, the F is for family, the G is for genus, and the S is for species. So this helps you remember because you're going to have to memorize this order. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So King Philip came over for great soup. You can make up your own mnemonic if you want. The more interesting, the better, right? Okay, so here this is for this panther. So its kingdom is Animalia. It's an animal. Its phylum is Chordata because it has a spinal cord. The class is Mammalia because it's a mammal, right? Order is Carnivora, and that's eat meat, right? Carnivores. And the family is Felis, which is cats. The genus is Pantheria, which is panthers. That's its genus. And then its species is Pardus. So when we look at the scientific name, it's going to be Panthera pardus. So you can see how this is all breaking down. So there you go. So like if it was only a plant eater, it would probably change up here, right? And this is for humans. So we're in the domain eukarya because we are made of eukaryotic cells. We're in the kingdom Animalia because we are part of the animal kingdom. Phylum Chordata because we have a spinal cord. And this is a subphylum. You don't really need to know that, but class is Mammalia because we are mammals. And our order is primates because we come from the primate side of it, right? So notice that cheetah wasn't a primate. It had a different order. And then our family is Homida, and our genus is Homo, and our species is sapien. So our scientific name would be Homo sapien. So when you ask, like, what is an actual species, this is organisms that can interbreed with one another and produce fertile offspring, right? So if you can see here we have this lovely family and they've had children, right? So they can interbreed with their own species. And here are wolves. So this is why you won't ever see um, a cat and a dog mating because they can't produce offspring. So they are a separate species. Okay, and then when two organisms of different species interbreed, they're called hybrids. And the thing is that the offspring cannot produce more, offspring. So they can't have babies. So this is a cross between a tiger and a lion, and it cannot go and have more babies. So next thing we have is a cladogram, and this is kind of how we chart it. So it shows the revolutionary relationships among groups of organisms. And I think on the video it kind of touched on this as well. So if we look here, this is what a cladogram looks like. And we can see here that they have a common ancestor. And so from that common ancestor, how do they branch out? So when we look at this, we have two different sections here, right? We have this one and this one. So we know this group is related to this group, but in this group we have subcategories. So when we look at each of these lines here that group these two together, that means they are more closely related. So for instance here, the baleen whale is more closely related to the toothed whale than to the hippopotamus, right? And the hippopotamus is more closely related to the toothed whale than, let's say, the cow, because it's in its own little brackets here. So the question is, who is more closely related, the hippo and the cow, or the hippo and the javelinas? And it's going to be the hippo and the cow, because they're still in this same bracket here, where the javelinas are in this whole other bracket there. So next we have, we're still on this like cladogram here, and we're going to show you how this works. So this is a method that shows the relationship between different organisms based on the presence or the absence of a characteristic. And this is called the derived characteristic. And we're going to be going through this and seeing how that works. So derived characteristics are evolutionary innovations that come in one group of organisms but not found in the older groups of that lineage. So let's say if I look at this guy here and see where all these points are, this is where the characteristic is, right? So like if I looked here with this frog, amphibians, from here on they all have 4 limbs. So these guys have 4 limbs, these guys have 4 limbs, but the ones before it do not. Fish do not have 4 limbs. So, and we look up here, amniotic egg. So frogs don't have amniotic eggs, but everybody else forward does. So it kind of tells you what's happening. Then we have what are called divergent and convergent evolution. So our common ancestor is here, and then we branched off from that common ancestor. So like the woolly mammoth and the elephant, they both came from a common ancestor. Now in convergent evolution, it's where they the trait is passed down, but it's not, it just so happens that it's passed down. It doesn't have anything to do with a common ancestor. So this ancestor gave them wings, right? And this ancestor here gave this one wings, but it's not from the same ancestor. It's from 2 separate ones. So divergent evolution is when two or more species diverge from a common ancestor. So in this case, I have a common ancestor, and from it, I have modern whale and woolly mammoth. So it went off from the same common ancestor. So here's convergent evolution, and two or more distinct species share traits, but they're not due to a common ancestor. So if we look at these guys, we see that all these, like dolphins and sharks, for instance, they all have fins, like each other, but they're not from the same ancestor. They're from different ancestors. Like dolphins are mammals and sharks are not. So they come from a different ancestor. Okay, stasis. Stasis is all about remaining the same. So it's a block of little or no evolutionary change in its species. So it's like it's the same for a long time. So there are different, this is an example of how it would happen, right? So in a hypothetical case, a population of snails is well adapted to its niche, right? So we have these snails are in this pond, and we can see all the shells are the same size, right? So all the ones that were before it, right, that had died, we can see their fossils there, and they're all the same size. So there's like no change, right? Or little change within from present to past days, right? Because it's remained the same. And then what happens is something happens within that ecosystem or whatever to isolate a part of that population. So in this case, you can see that this population was isolated from the rest of the pond because the water levels dropped. So the conditions in the lake are different. So snails are not currently as well adapted there. So these guys. All right. Then in the third one, a new condition causes the subpopulation to evolve rapidly. So these are the snails in the area that were isolated, and we can see how their shell got bigger and bigger as it went along. So it rapidly evolved. And our large population in the bigger part of the pond is the same size as it was before. So it's saying that this group evolved rapidly and this group remained in stasis, meaning it remained the same. So here's a picture of that we can see. So here's it after its rapid change in this isolated pond area where these guys are just the same in the big pond. Okay, so now we have reintroduction. So when the water level, like here's the water, remember it was isolated here, but when the water level goes back up, these two populations come into contact with each other. So we can see the little shells and the big shells, and now they can go back and forth. So what happens is we can see that these new larger snails outcompete the original ones, the ones with smaller shells. So maybe they can eat more food or whatever it is, but they survive better. So they're better fit for that new environment and are able to reproduce. So these smaller ones, they just disappear, die, and stuff. And only the large ones are going to be remaining. So now if we look here, population now moves back to stasis, meaning it's now going to stay the same, right, for these larger shelled snails. And we can see that the ones below it are still the shorter ones because they disappeared now. So we can see from one level to the other, there's this drastic difference, right? Okay, and then the result of this is we started with these small snails, we had that rapid change, and then we stayed the same with the larger shells. And that's it. Have a great day.